Good morning class. This video is for class 7 students, chemistry class, chapter number 3, elements, compounds and mixture. This is the part 2 of chapter. So in this video we are going to study how to separate the mixtures. Now the first topic is separation of solid-solid mixtures. How can we separate a mixture containing both the states as solid? The constituents of a solid-solid mixture can be separated by a process called sublimation. So the process by which solid-solid mixtures can be separated is known as sublimation. What is sublimation? It is the change of a solid directly into its vapor state without passing through the liquid state is called sublimation. So sublimation is a process in which one of the solid state in these two mixture, any one of the solid when it directly convert into its vapor state, then it can be separated from the other one. So this process is called sublimation. So the principle of this process is the process of sublimation is used to separate a mixture containing a constituent that sublimes. This is the basic principle behind the sublimation process. What is the principle? Principle is that whenever it is required for the sublimation to occur, then there should be one of the solids in the mixture which can be sublimed, which can be changed into its vapor state. Now what is the technique of separation? On heating the mixture in an evaporating dish, the solid that sublimes undergoes sublimation and changes into its vapors. So the technique is when we heat this mixture, the solid which needs to be sublimed. Suppose this is solid number 1 and this is 2. The solid number 2 can be sublimed. So on heating the mixture, the solid number 2 sublimes and undergoes sublimation and changes into its vapor form. So we get this solid separated from the other one. The vapors are then cooled to get the solid back. The vapors of this solid which have been sublimed can be again cooled to get it back. So we can get both the solids separately. The solid in the mixture that does not sublime remains behind in the dish. Now examples, you have to learn the examples. Sublimation is used in the separation of substances such as ammonium chloride, iodine, naphthalene, anthracene and benzoic acid. These are all the compounds which can be sublimed. These are the substances which can undergo sublimation. Here it is given an activity to understand the process of sublimation. You see here in this diagram, when a mixture of ammonium chloride and common salt is sublimed, is placed on a burner, then in this mixture ammonium chloride evaporates towards upwards in this funnel and they stick on this. When they cool, first they become vapor here and then on moving ahead they get sticks on this funnel and are separated. So they can be removed and collected as pure ammonium chloride. Thus we can get both the constituent of the mixture, that is ammonium chloride and common salt, separately. Now the next topic is separation of solid liquid mixtures. In a solid liquid mixture, when the solid is soluble in liquid, the techniques of evaporation and distillation can be used for separation of constituents of the mixture. For separating solid and liquid mixture, what are the two processes? Those are evaporation and distillation. Whenever a solid is soluble in liquid, it forms a mixture and these can be separated by evaporation and distillation. So first is the evaporation. Evaporation is the process of changing a liquid into its vapor state. The process of evaporation can be made faster by heating. Simple evaporation can also take place, but on heating it takes place quickly, fastly. So how does this occur? Whenever a liquid and a solid, in this the liquid, when it is heated or when it is evaporated, the liquid changes into its vapor form, and thus the solid and liquid are separated from each other. The principle behind this evaporation is the liquid constituents of the mixture evaporates, leaving behind the solid one. Technique of separation. The liquid constituent of a mixture is allowed to evaporate by exposing it to the air, sunlight, or by heating. In the presence of air, sunlight, and heat, the liquid part, the liquid constituent of mixture, evaporates in the atmosphere. During this process, liquid is lost to the atmosphere and solid is left behind. As we saw in sublimation, both the solids can be recovered after the separation. But in case of solid and liquid mixture, only the solid will be left behind and the liquid will be lost in the atmosphere because it has already been evaporated. Examples of evaporation are: the process of evaporation is used on a large scale to obtain common salt from seawater. We know that seawater contains salt. So to get the salt from it, we can evaporate seawater and get the solid constituent, which is the salt, easily. Seawater is trapped in the shallow ponds and allowed to evaporate in the sun. Common salt is left behind and thus the separation process is conducted. This is the activity which you can do, which you can see how it is done, how the common salt can be extracted from the seawater. The next process is distillation. Distillation is the process of separation of a liquid from its solution with a solid constituent by heating the liquid in its vapor form and then cooling the vapor to get back the pure liquid. In case of evaporation, the liquid was lost, but in distillation, we get the liquid and the solid. Both the constituent of the mixture can be got. Principle behind distillation is this method is used to recover both dissolved solid and the liquid from their mixture. Okay, both the constituent of the mixture can be obtained through this distillation process. Technique of separation: where the homogeneous mixture of a solid and a liquid is heated in a distillation flask, the liquid forms vapors. These vapors are passed through a condenser in which they get cooled and condensed to form a pure liquid. This pure liquid is called distillate, which is collected in a separate flask. The solid is left behind in the distillation flask. What is the technique behind distillation? So suppose in a distillation flask you have a solution, you have a mixture which contains solid and liquid, and you need to separate both of them. Okay. So what you do, you heat the distillation flask in which this mixture is in which this mixture is present. So what happened? Liquid part, the liquid constituents forms its vapors, and that vapor is passed in a condenser. And what is the work of condenser? Condenser cools the vapor. They cools the vapor and again changes them into its liquid form. Okay, so that is how we get the pure liquid as well as the solid portion also. So the pure liquid which is obtained is called distillate, which is collected in a different flask, and the solid is left as it is in the distillation flask. Example are: pure water or distilled water can be obtained from tap water by the process of distillation. We know that tap water has some solid constituents in it, okay, small particles in it. So when we do the process of distillation with the tap water, we get the pure water or the distilled water. Here in this activity, it has been shown in this diagram. You can see this is the distillation flask in which you have the salt solution. Suppose this is the salt solution in which you have the salt and water. This is a homogeneous mixture. When you heat it, what happens? In the distillation flask, you see the vapors of water will be evaporating. Okay, vapors will be formed, and when these vapors will be passed through this condenser, what happens in this condenser? This is the Liebig's condenser. In this condenser, the vapors again changes into its water form. In fact, this is the pure water form, because from here the salt will be left behind, and what happens in this? The pure distilled water you will get in this flask. This is the distillate. This is how the process of distillation is conducted. So the next topic is separation of liquid mixture. Now how are we going to separate liquid from a liquid? Liquids can be of two types, miscible and immiscible. There are two types of liquids, miscible and immiscible. What is miscible? Liquids that mix with each other in all proportions and form a single layer are called miscible. For example, alcohol and water are miscible liquids. Those liquids that mix with each other किसी भी proportion में, in any proportion the liquids form a single layer is called miscible. What are the examples? Water and alcohol. When water and alcohol are mixed, they are together mixed in any of the composition, any of the proportion, mixed completely. And immiscible, liquids that do not mix with each other and form a separate layers. When kerosene oil and water are mixed, you see kerosene oil and water are on different levels. When you mixed kerosene and water, you see the different layers. You see in this water, you see above there is a layer of kerosene oil. So this is the immiscible liquid. So how can you separate liquid mixture? By fractional distillation. Miscible liquids can be separated by the process of fractional distillation to separate the miscible liquids. The separation of a mixture of miscible liquids by distillation is called fractional distillation. What is the principle behind? Fractional distillation works on the basis of difference in boiling points of the liquid. So both are liquids. So this fractional distillation can be done when there is difference in the boiling point of both the liquids. So what is the technique of separation? The mixture, for example, alcohol and water, that is a miscible liquid, is kept in a distillation flask and heated. The liquid with the lower boiling point, that is alcohol. In this mixture, alcohol has lower boiling point, so it will evaporate. The one which has lower boiling point will evaporate first and get condensed in the Liebig condenser and is collected in the flask. The liquid with the higher boiling point, that is water, remains in the distillation flask. This is the way we separate the miscible mixture of water and alcohol. Example is the constituents of crude petroleum such as petrol, diesel and kerosene are separated by fractional distillation. Here you see, this is the diagram showing separation of alcohol and water by fractional distillation. In this is the mixture of the liquids which are alcohol and water. So alcohol boils first because it has the lower boiling point than the water. So it boils and is collected in the through the condenser. When it passes through the condenser, it comes in its pure form. This is the first fraction. Okay. Now the next method is used by using a separating funnel. Now immiscible liquids can be separated by using a separating funnel. Okay. And the principle behind is the method works when two liquids are immiscible. Only works when the two are immiscible. The heavier liquid forms the lower layer and the lighter liquid forms the upper layer. Whichever liquid in the mixture of two liquids, whichever liquid has heavier weight will occur in the lower level, and the one with the lighter weight will be on the upper layer. The technique behind this separation is the separation, for example, oil and water is placed in a separating funnel. Okay, when this immiscible mixture, which is oil and water, are placed in a separating funnel, what happens? The mixture forms two clear layers after some time. The lighter liquid oil is the lighter one, so it forms the upper layer, and water, which is the heavier weight, it forms the lower layer. When the stopper of the funnel is opened slowly, the heavier liquid water comes out first and is collected in a container. When the lower layer is transferred completely, the upper stopper of the the stopper of the funnel is closed, the lighter liquid oil remains in the separating funnel. How this happens? You see in this diagram, this is the oil and water separation using a separating funnel. See, this is the separating funnel. So when this mixture of oil and water is kept for some time in this separating funnel, they form their own layers because water is heavier than oil. So it is in the lower level and oil is lighter, so it is above the water. So when this separating funnel, here this stopper is opened, so what happened, this water comes in this beaker. Okay, so when once all the water comes through this separating funnel in this beaker, then the stopper will be stopped and we will get oil in this separating funnel and water in this, and that is how the two liquids will be separated. So examples are separation of oil and water, separation of petrol and water, separation of carbon tetrachloride and water. So this is how two liquids are separated. Now there is also a different method for separating complex mixtures such as colored dyes from ink. So paper chromatography. What is chromatography? Chromatography is a process, is a technique to separate the complex mixtures such as colored dyes from ink. And what is the principle behind? In chromatography, substances are separated as they travel in a mobile phase that passes through a stationary phase. In this, there is a mobile phase and a stationary phase. Stationary means static phase, रुका हुआ phase, और mobile मतलब moving phase. तो क्रोमेटोग्राफी का मेन प्रिंसिपल यही है कि इसमें जो भी मिक्सचर में सब्सटेंसेस होंगे उनमें एक मोबाइल होना चाहिए और एक स्टेशनरी होना चाहिए, ताकि जो स्टेशनरी वाला है वो वहीं रुक जाए और मोबाइल वाला मूव होके बाहर आ जाए और सेपरेट आउट हो जाए. Different substances travel at different speeds in a given time. We all know this कि हर सब्सटेंस अपना ट्रेवल टाइम अलग होता है. Different types of chromatography are paper chromatography, column chromatography, thin layer chromatography, gas chromatography. You learn this, okay? These are different types of chromatography. What happens in paper chromatography? Water, which is a solvent, act as the mobile phase. Water can move easily, so it act as mobile phase, and the filter paper act as stationary phase. Suppose there is a filter paper. You can see here in the diagram, this is a filter paper. When it is dipped in the water, okay, so water will move. This filter paper will absorb some water, so water will move in this, so water will be mobile phase and this will act as the stationary phase. So what happens in this technique? A baseline is drawn with a pencil at about 1/3 of the distance from the bottom edge of the strip of the filter paper. See, this is a filter paper. So this filter paper you take and you draw a dot about 1/3. You take the measurement of this and then you 1/3 of this paper यहाँ पे एक डॉट का फॉर्मेशन करते हैं. A spot of ink is placed in the center of the ink. Okay, यहाँ पे एक ink का हम spot बनाते हैं. Now the spot is dried and then the filter paper is suspended in a jar containing water so that the spot of ink is slightly above the water level. Now what happens? Once this spot of ink is dried, then it is dipped in this container containing water. तो ये पूरा तरह से इसको डिप नहीं करना है. यहाँ पे मान लो इंक है तो इसको इंक के लेवल को थोड़ा सा ऊपर रखना है, सो दैट इंक जो है इसमें मिक्स ना हो जाए. So as the water rises through the filter paper and comes in contact with the spot, it dissolves the constituents of the mixture and carries them different distances along the paper. What happens after some time? जब हम इसको इसमें हैंग करते हैं फिल्टर पेपर को, तो ये वाटर अपना कुछ ट्रेवल स्पीड होता है वाटर का, वाटर एब्जॉर्ब होता है फिल्टर पेपर में, और जब ये फिल्टर पेपर के इस पॉइंट के कांटेक्ट में आता है वाटर, तो इस इंक में जितने भी कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट्स कलर्स हैं वो अपने अपने लेवल पे सेपरेट हो जाते हैं, एंड दैट इज़ हाउ वी गेट अ कलरफुल बैंड ऑफ कलर्स. तो ये सारे मिक्सचर में जो भी कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट्स हैं वो सेपरेट हो जाते हैं. As the water dries out, different zones of color indicating different dye appear at different intervals. Okay, that is how you get different dyes at different levels. So this is the way you separate this mixture, this complex mixture of dye from ink. Okay, so this is all for this chapter. You go through this video and you ask me if you have any doubts and make it clear from me. So that is all. Thank you.